It's that time. Let's start doing some CSS. So let's finally start looking at some CSS. But if you look on the screen here, you clearly do not see any CSS. You just kind of see the remnants of what we've been doing in HTML. Well, that's okay, that's fine. But let's kind of think about this page before we actually get into writing CSS. So we have, my dog is named Bernie. He loves the treats. He has an Instagram. Commands he knows: sit, wait, lay down, come here. And okay, let's just start doing stuff. Well, let's look at what HTML is setting up for us. And I think one of the best ways to do that is, imagine each of these items here. I don't want to say like on an island, but imagine that they're unique. They mean something. You could access them. And that also, we could think of them as having almost an invisible border around them. So let me bust out the Chrome tools here. We're going to inspect. And then this is what I mean by the almost invisible border. This is, I think, an okay way to visualize it. So as we could see here, as we click on this and we come on in, we see already that there's some properties for this H1 tag. That the color is the hex and then like 0, 0, zeros, how many zeros are there? And then it's in 32 pixels times New Roman, the margin, which we'll learn what the margin is. We come down here, we have the paragraph tag. We see that it's the same color as the previous element we looked at. Its font is 16. And the way it's highlighting it, though, you can see these borders around it, right? You see the box, and then it kind of looks like a box within a box. There's this blue line. Sorry if it's not blue, if you're seeing a different color. And then there's these, it's like wedged in between these two other rectangular things above. What does that mean and why? And if we come down here, we see the H4. And then we see all this right here. And if we go over to the code here, I know it kind of jumped over, we see when we hover our finger over the unordered list here, we're actually encapsulating and kind of seeing all the different parts to the unordered list. We have the contents, then we have the bullet points, and then we have the orange stuff above and below. So if you want to replicate this on Chrome, Firefox, like any browser does it, you're typically going to, I think I have to X out of here. You're going to right click and then inspect. Now it might be developer tools, I think on Firefox, but you should be able to figure it out on there. And you could either hover over here in the actual code, and I recommend getting used to this sooner rather than later, although I will cover this eventually. And you could click this up here to select an element in the page and then inspect it. And so let's actually write some CSS. We're not going to impact or touch anything over here, but I want to show you how the ebb and flow of it before we start really injecting it into the website. So let's do something like, let's just call this styles.css. You may see main.css or style.css. It really depends on if you're downloading something and say it's a framework or a library and there's CSS files, they may be pre-named for you per just the authors of that library or framework. Maybe your team has decided it's best to name it one way or over another, but typically any project you're going to have is going to contain a main central CSS file. So we have that, and let's go ahead and move this on over. We're going to minimize that there. And I'll show you how to import and use CSS 3 different ways, I think actually in the next video. But let me break down the parts of CSS, and then we're going to get into the actual applied magic of it. So as we can see here, I have an H1 tag. And so let's just do this and then stop right here. And so This is known as the selector. There's different kinds of selectors. I think there's 6 off the top of my head. And this is the declaration. So you have these squiggly brackets right here. You're going to see a lot of squiggly brackets in programming. And everything in here is going to be what's applied to any H1 tag. Now, there's different ways in which the styles cascade down, and I'll definitely touch on that, I think, in the next 2 videos if that comes to plan. But for now, when I bring this file into here, any H1 is going to have the styles I apply on the inside. So let's do font family. Let's just do that because it auto completes it there for us. And it's given us some colors here. Let's just go with red. And so anything you have on the left of the semicolon, whether it's the font family or the color, that's going to be a property. And then on the right-hand side of it is going to be the value. So property, value, property, value. One note, if you're wondering why there's 3 in a row here, it's because, if I remember right, if Arial or Helvetica can't be applied, it has backups. And so no matter what, it'll default to sans serif if these 2 can't come on in. So this is the basics to CSS, to kind of how we start thinking about it. And in the next video, we're actually going to start applying our styles. So cool stuff.